Hello everyone, I'm here with my next video on a very interesting and thrilling chapter, Man Overboard by Vasantha Murthi. This is the text in the beginning. I will read the text and explain along with my reading. After that, I have the question and answers, reference to context questions, and extra questions for your help. So let us start reading the chapter. I stood on the deck of SS Rajula. As she waved, slowly moved out of Madras harbour, I waved to my grandparents till I could see them no more. I was thrilled to be on board a ship. It was a new experience for me. Are you travelling alone? Asked the person standing next to me. Yes, uncle, I'm going back to my parents in Singapore, I replied. What is your name? He asked. Vasantha, I replied. I spent the day exploring the ship. It looked just like a big house. There were furnished rooms, a swimming pool, a room for indoor games, and a library. Yet there was plenty of room to move around. So when the story starts, we see this is all about a sea journey in the ship SS Rajula. SS Rajula ship has been referred to as she, as we can see in the first line. Vasantha is the narrator who is traveling, and this is her first ship journey, so everything was a new experience for her. Her grandparents had come to see her off. When the ship moved, she waved to them and she was very, very excited when a man asked her whether she was traveling alone. She replied in affirmative, that is, she said that yes, she was traveling alone and she was going back to Singapore where her parents were. When the man asked her name, she told him that she was Vasantha. Vasantha goes on to describe the ship and she says that the ship was like a big house. It was all furnished with a swimming pool, room with indoor games, library. Everything was like a big house and there was a lot of room to move about. That is, a lot of space to move around. The next morning, the passengers were seated in the dining hall having breakfast. The loudspeaker spluttered noisily, and then the captain's voice came loud and clear. Friends, we have just received a message that a storm is brewing in the Indian Ocean. I request all of you to keep calm. Do not panic. Those who are inclined to seasickness may please stay in their cabins. Thank you. There was panic everywhere. An old lady prayed aloud, "Oh God, have mercy on us. My only son is waiting for me in Singapore." A gentleman consoled her, "Don't worry, madam. It is only a warning. We may not be affected at all." Another lady who was sitting beside me looked very ill. "Not rough weather. I am already seasick. A rough sea will be the end of me." So it so happened that next morning on their sea journey, the passengers who were seated in the dining hall, they were having the breakfast. They were told by the captain through a loudspeaker that there was a storm that was building up in the Indian Ocean and that he requested everybody to keep their calm. He wanted everybody not to panic, no one to panic, and also he told as a suggestion or an advice that if anyone had problem, something like seasickness or had a lot of fear of sea storms and all, he wanted those people to stay in their cabins. Now, this announcement created panic all around. Everybody became scared. There was a lady who was praying to God to have mercy because she wanted God to save everybody. Her son was waiting for her in Singapore. There was another gentleman who consoled the lady. In fact, he told that it was just a warning and they were just being warned to be careful. It could be possible that they were not affected at all due to that storm. And there was another lady who was talking about she having seasickness. And in fact, a rough sea would really bring about an end. Like this is all, when you're very scared, these type of um thoughts come in the mind. I could not understand why all the elders were so upset. I remembered the several sea adventures I had read. Excitedly, I turned to the elderly gentleman sitting next to me. Uncle, won't it be thrilling to face a storm on board a steamer? Have you ever been on a ship during the storm? It can be quite unpleasant, he replied rather severely. I remember a time when the ship on which I was traveling ran off course. We were wandering on the sea, on the ocean for a couple of days. I remembered my class teacher, an Englishwoman, telling us in class one day, when I crossed the English Channel on my way to Singapore, there was a big storm near Gibraltar. The ship rocked to and fro. Everything in the cabins rolled up and down. Even the heavy pianos in the lounge went crashing against the walls. This made my imagination run wild. Turning to Uncle, again I said, wouldn't it be fun if the storm broke when we have lunch? Then the tables with all the food on them would run away from us, and the chairs with us sitting on them would be a merry-go-round. So it so happened that the narrator, Vasantha, was a little confused as to why the elders were so upset. In fact, she asked uncle sitting beside her, the elderly man sitting beside her, she referred to him as uncle and she asked whether he had experienced uh, anything while traveling, any storm while traveling on the sea. So he, in fact, he told her that some sea journeys during the storm can be very dangerous and unpleasant ones. And he remembered that once their ship, due to the storm, was pushed and and the ship had gone adrift. That means ran off course, means it had moved out of the path that it was traveling, and they had to wander in the ocean for a couple of days finding the best place to anchor their ships. So this was told by uncle, and when he was telling this, Vasantha was remembered. She recalled her English teacher who once told that when her English teacher was traveling the English Channel once, she was going to Singapore, then there was a big storm near Gibraltar and the ship had rocked to and fro, and in fact the pianos had dashed and crashed against the walls. Now this imagination, this brought, this thought brought about a wild imagination in Vasantha. Vasantha is a young little girl and she starts imagining and she tells to uncle that it would be fun if the storm came during lunch and she would love to see the tables running towards the wall and the chairs going round like a merry-go-round. This is an innocent imagination of the little girl Vasantha. She has never experienced a storm in the sea. In fact, this was her first journey and she had never, experienced, or never, she could have never even have had that in the mind that it would be so dangerous, because there have been many, many shipwrecks, and we have read, history is evidence. So many ships have disappeared, so many ships have got wrecked, so many dangerous things can happen during a sea journey, but Vasantha was not quite aware of this. Everyone round the table stared at me in horror. I thought to myself, oh, These adults, they have no sense of adventure, how dull they are. The storm didn't break, but in the evening, a strong wind started blowing. The ship rocked to and fro, rocking and rolling to the music of the wind. Huge waves were dashing against it. Even though the deck was slippery, I was running around. That's when I noticed Uncle leaning over the railings. I ran up to him thinking he too was enjoying the experience. "Good morning, Uncle. Isn't it lovely?" I asked him. But he wasn't well at all. He was retching over the rails and looked rather blue about the mouth. I felt sorry for him. "Can I be of any help? Shall I call the doctor?" I asked him. He couldn't reply but only held up his hand. As another bout of retching shook him, he leaned over the railings. At the same time, a huge wave lashed the ship. It lurched violently, and the man tumbled over the railings into the wild sea. For a second, I stood rooted to the spot. Then I ran like someone possessed, shouting, and "Help! Help!" Now, it so happened that when Vasantha talked about her imagination about the dining tables running here and there and the chairs going round like a merry-go-round, everybody stared at Vasantha. Just then the storm, she tells us that the storm did not break, but in the evening a strong wind was blowing and it blew the whole evening. In the morning, when she got up, she ran out to see and enjoy the experience, and she saw that uncle was standing next to the railing. And so she went to greet uncle. She wished him good morning. She asked whether the whole experience was lovely or not. But then she noticed that uncle was holding on to the railings and he was retching. Retching means he was vomiting and his mouth was all blue and he was not well at all. She asked whether she could be any help. She could call the doctor, but he was not in a position to reply. But then again, there was a bout of retching that shook him up, and at the same time, there was a huge wave that violently moved and rocked the ship. The man got rocked very badly, and in fact, he fell off the ship down into the sea, into the wild sea. For a second, she just stood and she just couldn't imagine what had happened. She was totally scared and shocked, and then she started running wildly to ask people for help. "Man overboard! Save him!" I must have made a lot of noise. I heard footsteps running even that early in the morning. Tears streaming down my face and shouting incoherently, I ran full pelt into an officer. "What's the matter? Why are you making so much noise?" he asked in a stern voice. I was surprised to see it was the captain. "Oh, sir," I blurted out in relief, "a man fell into the sea. Please save him." "Where?" he asked, immediate on the alert. "There," I said, pointing a finger. He did not wait for more details, but ran at once to the room full of officers. "Man overboard!" he cried. "Stop ship! Drop anchor! Quick!" His instructions were immediately obeyed. The captain then raced to the upper deck. I kept trailing behind him. "Lower the lifeboats and crew into the sea towards the helm," he said. "There is a man overboard." Here again the men quickly obeyed him. People started crowding the deck. "What's happening?" somebody asked me. So when Vasantha saw that the man had fallen into the sea, she ran calling help, help. She started calling man overboard. She started screaming to save him. Just then she collided into a man and she could hear footsteps running. She saw that it was the captain and she told the captain all about that man and she also showed him the place, the direction where he had fallen. Without waiting for a second, the captain ran into a room full of officers. He informed them that the man had fallen down into the wild sea. He told them to drop the anchor so that the ship would become motionless should the ship would stop. And then he ran up to the upper floor. He told everybody to lower the lifeboats, and he told everyone that there was a man overboard and they had to save him. Vasantha, the little girl, she was so scared, she was so shocked that she kept following the captain to see what was happening and what was he doing. People started crowding round the deck and started asking what was happening. Word soon went round. Every one was tense. Only an occasional "There he is" could be heard. Someone asked, "Who is he?" Another replied, "Don't know." Meanwhile, two lifeboats moved towards the man. I stood close to the captain. In his anxiety, he gripped my shoulder tightly and I winced. "You are hurting me, sir," I protested. "I'm sorry, my dear. The sea is very rough today. I hope my men can reach him in time. My ship has never lost a passenger before," he said, crossing himself. He was watching the rescue operations through the pair of binoculars that hung round his neck. The boat was too far for me to see what was happening. I tugged at the captain's sleeve. So word soon went round that the man had fallen. Word soon went round means the whole message was spread. Everybody came to know in the ship. Everyone was tensed, was full of anxiety, and people on the lifeboat were screaming, "There he is," and here and there they were finding that man. People didn't know who he was. They were asking each other. Two lifeboats were brought down, which rushed to save the man. And the captain was very nervous because nothing of this sort had happened earlier when he was the captain of the ship. He did not want to lose any passenger because it had never happened before. And in anxiety, he gripped the narrator's shoulder tightly, which actually was very painful for Vasantha, and she quickly protested and told that his hand was hurting her. He told that he was very anxious, he was very tensed. He was very sorry that he had held her very tightly, but he told the reason for it because he had never lost a passenger and he did not want uh, to lose anyone. He wanted his people to save him. He, in fact, prayed to God. Here it is written, he said, crossing himself means he remembered, he prayed to Jesus Christ to save that man. He put on his binoculars into his eyes to see where he was. Binoculars, through them you can see things which are very far off. You can see them closer to you. So, and even Vasantha was very, very scared. She was also very anxious. She tugged at the captain's sleeve. She was holding his hand and was, clutching it. She had gripped the captain's sleeve in anxiety. "What are they doing, sir? Have they rescued the man?" I asked him. "They have caught him by the arms and are pulling him towards the boat." He was giving me a running commentary. "Oh, what a bad luck! A sudden current has swept the man away, dragging two of the sailors with him." He sounded nervous. Just then he noticed the passengers crowding round the railings. "Keep away from those railings," he shouted. "We don't want another accident." The ship had dropped anchor but was heaving up and down. I borrowed the captain's binoculars. Now I could see the rescue operation clearly. The crew in the rescue boats threw a strong rope to the two sailors in the sea and shouted, "Catch!" Both of them were good swimmers and soon had caught hold of the rope. Then the powerful strokes they swam towards Uncle. One of them caught hold of him while the other tied the rope round his waist. With Uncle between them and the rope secure, the sailors swam back to the lifeboats. The rescue team in the boats leaned over and heaved the three men into it. In a jiffy, the boats were heading back to the ship. Now Vasantha was standing beside the captain and she saw the captain looking through the binoculars. He could see very clearly what was happening. So Vasantha asked him as to what was happening in the ocean, whether the man was rescued or not, and he started giving a running commentary. He said that they had caught the man, and then with a sudden gush of waves, the man again uh, swept away, dragging two of the sailors, and he sounded very nervous. He did not want to lose any of the sailors. And just then he saw that all the men were crowding with the railings. He did not want another accident, so he told everybody to move away. Vasantha borrowed the binoculars from the captain and she could clearly see how the rescue operation was taking place. She saw that the two sailors had caught the man. They put a rope round his waist and the other to the boat. They tied it and then they pulled the man, and somehow with great difficulty they were able to lift the man and put him into the boat, and now they moved towards their ships. "Thank God," muttered the captain, making the sign of cross again. "They have managed to save him." He turned to the passengers thronging the railings. "Please do not crowd round the man when he is brought up. He will need immediate medical care." Then he saw the ship's doctor standing with the couple of nurses. A stretcher was also being brought close to the railings. "Doctor, is everything ready for the patient?" the captain asked. "Aye, aye," the captain nodded the doctor. The captain moved away to restore order on the ship. I edged close to the doctor and asked, "What will you do to him, doctor? Will he be all right?" "Aye, I think so. All the water will have to be pumped out of him. He'll have to be given artificial respiration and kept warm." "How do you pump the water out?" I asked. "We put him up, put him on his stomach and massage him until he brings it all up," he replied. So the captain thanked God. He made the gesture of Jesus Christ cross again, and he was very thankful to God that they had been able to save the man that had fallen into the wild ocean. He told all the passengers on the ship not to crowd the man because the man who was being brought, who had been rescued, would need immediate medical care. He turned to talk to the doctors and asked if everything was ready. The doctors gave the answer in affirmative, that everything, they were all ready, and they would have to pump the water out and he would be given artificial respiration. In fact, Vasantha, who did not know how they would pump the water out, she asked the doctor what and how they would do it. So he told that they would make him lie on his stomach and massage him from behind so that all the water comes out. As soon as the rescue team reached the ship, Uncle was placed on the stretcher and rushed to the hospital room. The captain then came to me and said, "Run along now and play with your friends. I'm busy, but will send for you when I'm through. I might even have a surprise for you." When he turned away, I quietly sneaked into the hospital room to see what they were doing to the patient. Two nurses were scurrying to and fro with trays full of medicines and syringes. Another was rushing off with Uncle's wet clothes. I stopped her and asked if Uncle was conscious. "Not yet," she replied, "but he is better now. He should regain consciousness in a little while." The ship was still rolling, so I couldn't play any games. I went and sat in a cozy chair in the lounge and started reading a storybook. I was feeling drowsy and must have dozed off. The next tilling I knew was somebody saying, "Wake up, child. You are Vasantha, aren't you? The captain wants to see you in his cabin." I looked up to see a sailor standing before me. It took me a minute to recollect the rescue operation and the captain telling me, "I'll call you afterwards." Now it so happened that the rescue team had reached the ship and the uncle was placed on the stretcher and they were all rushing to the hospital room. The captain then came to Vasantha and told her that she should not be there, she should go along and play with friends, and he would call for her. And he also said that he might also give a surprise to Vasantha. She turned away and quietly she sneaked into the hospital room. She wanted to see how uncle was and what the nurses were doing. She saw that two nurses were rushing here and there. Scurrying means running here and there in great hurry with medicines and syringes. She also saw another nurse who was rushing with uncle's wet clothes. She stopped that nurse to ask how uncle was and whether he was conscious or not. The nurse informed her that he was better. He was not conscious, but he would regain consciousness in a little while. The ship was still moving and rolling. The waves were still not still, so she couldn't play. So Vasantha went and sat down in a cozy chair in the lounge. She started reading the storybook and she was so tired that she fell asleep. She got up with the sound of a sailor who was standing in front of her and trying to wake her up. He informed Vasantha that the captain was calling Vasantha in his cabin. So then she was able to recollect, because she had just got up after a nap. She recollected that how uncle was rescued and how the captain had also told that he would call her. I followed the officer eagerly. He left me outside the captain's door, saying, "Go right inside." I knocked and entered. The captain was standing in the middle of the room. When he saw me, he came forward and literally swept me off my feet. He was still smiling when he put me down. "You have plenty to tell your friends, eh? Now close your eyes." I did so. Seconds later, I heard him say, "See what I have got for you." On opening my eyes, I saw a big brown box. On it was written, "With the best compliments of Captain Lindsay." I took the box and eagerly opened it. "Oh, what a lovely ship!" I exclaimed. "Does this really belong to me? Can I keep it?" Now, when the sailor had informed Vasantha that she was called by the captain to his cabin, she quickly followed the officer. She went inside. She saw the captain standing in the middle of the room. He swept her off. He took her in his arms and he was very happy with what Vasantha had done. And then he gifted her a big brown box. On the big brown box, it was written, "With the best compliments of Captain Lindsay." That means the captain's name was Captain Lindsay. Vasantha was very excited. She eagerly opened it and she saw a ship, a lovely ship inside. She was very happy and she asked the captain if she could keep it. Lying snugly on the velvet backing was a most beautiful model of a ship. On it was inscribed BISN and Company, SS Rajula. I placed the box carefully on the table, then I threw my hands round the captain and hugged him and kissed him. He patted my cheek and smiled as he saw me lift the box and walk happily out of his room. I proudly showed my present to every one I met. "See what the captain has given me. Isn't it lovely?" "Yes, indeed," was an unanimous verdict. I was the happiest person on board that day. So when she opened the box and she saw the ship, she saw that it was on a velvet backing, and on the ship was inscribed BISN and Company, SS Rajula. She was very, very happy. She thanked the captain, hugged him and kissed him by throwing her hands round his neck. He patted her and she walked very proudly out of his room carrying the nice gift that was given to her by the captain. She showed the gift to everybody. Everybody was happy with what she had done. She was very, very happy that day. It was her first ship journey and it was a happy one. At least the ending was a happy one. Now is the time for question and answers. Let's start. Question 1. Where was Vasantha going? Whom did she meet on the ship? The answer is Vasantha was going to Singapore. She met an elderly gentleman on the ship. Question 2. How did the ship look? The answer is the ship looked just like a big house. There were furnished rooms, a swimming pool, a room for indoor games, and a library. Yet there was plenty of room for 11,111 people. Question 3. What was Vasantha's reaction after the announcement was made by the captain? What did she recount? Answer is, after the announcement was made by the captain, Vasantha was very excited. She had read several sea adventures. She recounted her class teacher telling the class one day about her experience when she had crossed the English Channel on her way to Singapore. There had been a big storm near Gibraltar, and the ship had rocked to and fro, causing everything in the cabin to roll up and down. Even the heavy pianos in the lounge had crashed against the walls. Question 4. Describe the rescue operation in your own words. The answer is, as soon as the captain gave out the instructions, some sailors on the two lifeboats were sent out to the man. They grabbed the man in the sea and started pulling him towards the ship. However, a sudden current swept the man away, dragging two sailors along with him. The crew in the lifeboats then threw a strong rope to the sailors in the sea. The sailors caught the rope and tied it around the man's waist. Then finally, with strong strokes, the sailors swam back to the lifeboats with the man, and soon they all boarded the ship. Question 5. How were the doctors planning to treat the patient? Explain. The doctors first planned to pump the water out of the man by putting him on his stomach and massaging him until he brought it all out. Then they planned to give him artificial respiration and keep him warm. Question 6. What were the doctors and nurses doing when Vasantha sneaked into the hospital room? The answer is, when Vasantha sneaked into the hospital room, two nurses were scurrying to and fro with trays full of medicines and syringes. Another nurse was rushing off with the man's wet clothes. Question 7. What was inside the big brown box? Did Vasantha like it? How do you know? The answer is, inside the big brown box was the most beautiful model of the ship SS Rajula. On it was inscribed BISN and Co. SS Rajula. Yes, Vasantha liked it very much. We know this because as soon as she saw it inside the box, she threw her arms round the captain, hugged and kissed him. She proudly showed her present to everyone she met on the ship. She felt like the happiest person on the boat that day. Let us start with reference to context question. Question 1. The extract is, friends, we have just received a message that a storm is brewing in the Indian Ocean. I request all of you to keep calm. Do not panic. Those who are inclined to seasickness may please stay in their cabins. Thank you. Question A. Who said these words? The answer is Captain Lindsay, the captain of SS Rajula ship, said these words. Question B. Where were the listeners? The answer is, the listeners were on board SS Rajula. They were seated to have breakfast. Question C. How did they react? The answer is, there was panic everywhere. Some people began to pray while others started to feel seasick. Extract 2. Can I be of any help? Shall I call the doctor? Question A. Who said these words to whom? The answer is, Vasantha said these words to uncle. Question B. Could the listener reply? Why? The answer is, no, uncle could not reply because another bout of retching shook him and he leaned over the railings. Question C. What happened next? Next, a huge wave lashed at the ship. It lurched the ship violently and Uncle tumbled over the railings into the wild sea. Extract 3. You are hurting me, sir, I protested. Question A. Who said these words to whom? The answer is Vasantha said these words to the captain, Lindsay. Question B. How did the listener hurt the speaker? The answer is the captain hurt Vasantha by gripping her shoulder tightly in his anxiety. Question C. What was the listener's response to these words? The answer is the captain apologized to Vasantha and said that he was anxious as his ship had never lost a passenger before. The sea was very rough that day and so the captain hoped that his men could reach Uncle in time. Extract 4. Please do not crowd round the man when he is brought up. He will need immediate medical care. Question A. Who said these words to whom? The answer is the captain said these words to the passenger. Question B. What were the listeners doing? The answer is the passengers were thronging the railings. Question C. Why was immediate medical care needed? The answer is immediate medical care was needed because the man had fallen deep into the wild sea. Extract 5. Wake up, child. You are Vasantha, aren't you? The captain wants to see you in his cabin. Question A. Who said these words? Answer is a sailor said these words. Question B. Where was Vasantha? What was she doing? Answer is Vasantha was in the launch. She was sleeping on a cozy chair. Question C. Why did the captain want to see her? The answer is the captain wanted to see Vasantha because he was very happy with her quick thinking and he had a surprise for her. I have 2 extra questions for you. Let us quickly go through them. Question 1. Do you think Vasantha had an adventure? How? The answer is yes. Vasantha had a mighty good adventure. She sailed on a ship alone for the first time and spoke to a stranger, learning about his experiences. She saved the gentleman's life and befriended the captain of the ship. She witnessed a rescue operation and finally got a beautiful model of the ship SS Rajula from the captain himself. She also made several friends on board. Question 2. Why do you think the captain rewarded Vasantha? The answer is the captain was a very responsible person. He had never lost a passenger on his ship before. Had Vasantha not called his attention to save the gentleman's life, he would not have been able to do so. He was very anxious when the captain was being rescued, hence his happiness and relief made him reward Vasantha, the beautiful model of the ship SS Rajula. I hope this video was helpful to you. If you are a newcomer, please subscribe to my channel, share the video and make my family English with Mona a big one. Do take good care of yourself. Bye.